Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by onlinegreatbooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. I'm Scott Hambrick.
And I'm Karl.
Today, Uncle Karl and I are going to talk about Henry David Thoreau's book, Walden, one of my favorites. But before we get into that, I would like the dear listener to go to onlinegreatbooks.com/OGB podcast and jump on our VIP waiting list and listen, even if you don't want to sign up, go join the waiting list because we send you all kinds of white papers. We send you a little digest of our reading list at Online Great Books. We send you a couple of essays from Mortimer Adler that are interesting, some resources that might be helpful to you if you wanted to read these books on your own. So go to onlinegreatbooks.com/OGB podcast today and sign up there. Click the Join Now button. If enrollment's open, join us, and you'll get 25% off your first 3 months by doing that, or just get on the waiting list, and we'll send you some goodies anyhow.
Do it.
And I normally make these appeals at the end of the show, but I'm going to assume that not everybody stays at the end, Karl. They should.
How could they turn it off?
Because that's where we get real salty.
Yeah.
It would be a great help to us if you recommended our show to one of your friends, or even went into maybe iTunes and left a review there. That would be a big help to us.
2 of your friends.
Oh, 2 of you. Listen, if you're fortunate enough to have 2 friends, send it to both of them. Here's a review. This guy says, a breath of fresh air. Thank you, Scott and Karl, for the podcast. I appreciate the podcast because it seeks to and succeeds at helping the listeners think of what is true and beautiful and good in the world. Often, Scott and Karl will get choked up at something from what they're reading that is pure and good, and it is contagious. I was in tears on the way into work listening to the Lord of the Rings Part 2 podcast that speaks to friendship and love and how sick our culture is in its understanding of love. This is truly a wonderful podcast, and I appreciate the call to think of deeper, more profound, and beautiful realities. Thanks.
Wow.
Man, that's awfully nice of them.
We're kind of making up this podcast as we go, and it's taking shape.
No kidding.
Let's do a podcast. I think I said this before. I want to be the guy pointing to the wonderful stuff and say, isn't that neat? Mm-hmm. And I really like when other people see it and say, hey, that is pretty neat.
Ain't shabby.
The thrill of co-discovery. How's that for a word?
I like that.
Yeah.
Go sign up the VIP list, go leave a little iTunes review, go tell a buddy. All those things would be helpful to us because we don't charge for people to listen to the show. So help us out that way. Meanwhile, Thoreau's Walden here, man.
What a bombshell of a book. I remember, I don't know, I think my brother had a copy of this and Civil Disobedience, and it must have been excerpts because if I had read the whole thing, I never would have finished high school.
Yeah?
It's an angry book by a guy who's fed up and goes off to live by a lake. It's just so mad. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mad like 1840s New England mad, It's not yelling and screaming. It's very reserved mad, but still it's a really, really angry book. And I think if you are interested in keeping things going as they are, should never allow anybody to read it.
Right.
It should be banned.
Yeah, this book is about nonconformity and following your own set of values and doing things. I hate this word. People say intentionally, but not doing anything that doesn't suit your own purpose.
Right.
Can you build a society full of Henry David Thoreaus?
No, but there's no danger of that, right? Most people aren't going to do it. You probably heard a few quotes from this book. The one about different drummers is from this book. The one that Pink Floyd quotes in Dark Side of the Moon, most men live lives of quiet desperation, is from this book. But that's not the good stuff.
The famous colloquialism about when you cut firewood, it warms you twice.
Is that from here?
He says a friend of his told him that, but he immortalized it.
Is that what they say in Concord?
Yep, that's right. What
do they say in Catoosa?
Same thing. Warms you when you cut it, and warms you when you burn it.
What if Catoosa was like a colony of Concord?
It's not. It has conformity to a perverse way of life that mostly isn't good. There's a lot good about it, but it's There's a lot that's not good about it. Picture the widely advertised image of, rural America. And that's what it is. A lot of bad stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Not enough Thoreauism. He's an ascetic, and boy, is he. His family was wealthy. He was a Harvard man, at least for a little while. I think his family owned a pencil factory. They manufactured graphite pencils, if I'm not mistaken, which was pretty high tech at the time. They had money, and he wouldn't have a whole lot to do with it. He wasn't interested. It didn't suit him, and he rejected all of it. And one summer, he went out to the woods by Walden Pond and built a shack. My kids would call it a hobo shack, and endeavored to live there, not to live cheaply or dearly, but to transact some private business with the fewest possible obstacles. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So he did for 2.5 years.
It's like a book about laziness, except not really. What I think it's a book about, I've talked about this guy before. I had him in one of my classes way back when I was part of the educational establishment. And we were talking about what happiness is. And happiness is, I always wanted to figure that out on the first day of class, or at least we didn't figure it out, but point out to them that they didn't really know and they might want to try to find out. And the one guy thought, well, the reason I'm here in school is so I can get a good job so that I could buy stuff. And meanwhile, this is a 9 a.m. class where he's coming listening to me at 9 a.m. This seems a lot of work just to get a job. And I said to him, why don't you just try wanting less stuff?
Right.
And he was amazed. He had never thought of it. I don't know what has happened to him. I haven't really kept in touch. But if you want less stuff, then the stuff that you have becomes wealth.
Thoreau famously said, there's almost not a week that goes by that I don't quote this. He says, the man who owns little is little owned.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got the line in there that we've become the tool of our tools. And he's talking about slave drivers. It's bad this is in the time of slavery in the United States, of course. It's bad if you have a northern overseer. It's worse if you have a southern overseer. It's worst of all when you are the slave driver of yourself.
Yeah. He actually says the northern overseers are worse, Karl.
Does he?
I believe that's right. We'll go check that out here in a second. You need to think about it long and hard before you undertake to work. You need to think about why you do it, and you need to think about if it suits your purposes. And right up in the very beginning of the thing, he tells a story about an Indian who made baskets. And I thought this was just wonderful. I'm going to read it. It's just one paragraph. A strolling Indian went to sell baskets at the house of a well-known lawyer in my neighborhood. Do you wish to buy any baskets? He asked. No, we do not want any, was the reply. What? Exclaimed the Indian as he went out the gate. Do you mean to starve us? Having seen his industrious white neighbors so well off that the lawyer had only to weave arguments, and by some magic wealth its standing followed, he had said to himself, I will go into business, I will weave baskets. This is a thing which I can do. Thinking that when he had made the baskets, he would have done his part, and it would be the white man's part to buy them. He had not discovered that it was necessary for him to make it worth the other's while to buy them, or at least make him think that it was so, or to make something else which it would be worth his while to buy. He said, blah, blah, blah. So Thoreau says, I studied rather how to avoid the necessity of even selling them.
Right. So if you make the baskets, it's not enough to make the basket. You have to market the basket. You have to create the need. A lot of what you see nowadays is creating the need for a product.
Yep.
That Baby Yoda thing is trying to create a need for Disney Plus, and I'm just completely immune, right? I don't need another streaming service, but they're trying to make me think I do.
And you don't need more babies either. I mean, that's
would... Well,
yeah, you know.
I like babies,
well,
but I don't need Baby Yoda, and I don't need another streaming service. So it didn't exist. They made it. Then they're trying to make you want it. It is not a necessity of life. You do not need a streaming service. You need food and shelter, and apparently a pretty robust inner life.
Yeah.
What else do you need?
He wants to avoid the necessity of selling the basket. And for Thoreau, the way you do that is you need little. You must need little so that you don't need to sell those things. And then throughout this first book, Economy, he just rails on all these petty wants and petty needs people commonly have.
Well, he calls them petty. So if you had a whole society of Thoreaus, you'd be poor. your gross domestic product would go down. You wouldn't build fine skyscrapers. You wouldn't have marble halls of government.
Keep talking. I like it.
You wouldn't have fine clothes. You wouldn't have the internet. You'd have a bunch of people sitting in shacks looking at the birds come out in the spring.
What's wrong with that?
It'd be poverty. So I was chatting about this. I was talking with, I think, the famous Seminar One about this. Seminar One are the first people to have signed up with us, and they have stuck with us. So they're kind of special. It's like if you read the Republic, Socrates in the Republic suggests an ideal city, and it's a very minimal place. Let's get the bare necessities. So we need some people to do this, some people do that. We get our food. Then we're going to have our very nice life reclining on our couches of myrtle, eating our barley, and we'll be with our wives and our children and sing songs to the gods. And then Glaucon says, but there's no luxury here. And then they go off and they have to build a city that nobody really likes with all of the warfare and everything.
Yeah, Plato or Socrates posits that luxury necessitates the big state.
Yeah.
And Thoreau does here too later. He says without consumerism, they don't have the tax base to wage war in Mexico, and they don't have the tax base to grow up a giant state and control everybody.
Yeah. He's pretty angry about war. That's one of the things he's angry about.
That's pretty good.
He's, well, it's not a very patriotic book.
No. Or is it?
It's not conventionally patriotic. I believe he calls the soldiers fools at some point for going off. He can hear the military marches coming from Concord across the hills to his little shack, and I don't have the quote handy, but he's not. It's like a little mist of the marches that float over him, and he doesn't take part of it. If you had a whole society of Henry David Thoreau's, it would not be the society we have.
It would certainly be different. But I'm very attracted to at least some of it. He talks about common fashions. He says a monkey in Paris puts on a traveler's cap, and all the monkeys in America do the same. Every generation laughs at the old fashions, but follows religiously the new. So he cautions us against just wanting stuff because somebody else had it.
Yeah. Now, bell-bottoms are ridiculous.
Yep.
Yoga pants, though, are ubiquitous.
They're ubiquitous. Well, the yoga pants don't get caught up in the sprocket of your motorcycle, though.
I'm kind of fond of bell-bottoms. I like them.
Yeah.
When you strolled into a room, your pants would lead the way.
They got there first.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And if you had the platform shoes, that was cool. This is 1978, I think.
Yeah.
This is the peak of fashion.
Speaking of clothing, he says, I cannot believe that our factory system is the best mode by which men may get clothing. The condition of the operatives is becoming every day more like that of the English, and it cannot be wondered at, since, as far as I have heard or observed, the principal object is not that mankind may be well and honestly clad, but unquestionably that corporations may be enriched. In the long run, men hit only what they aim at. Therefore, though they should fail immediately, they'd better aim at something high. Even your clothing needs to have a higher aim.
Well, the people making the clothing, they have an aim.
Yep.
But what's the aim? Is it to see you well and durably clothed?
Maybe at Carhartt.
Maybe. Is that an endorsement?
Yes. Carhartt stuff is high dollar, man. It's expensive. It hurts me.
It hurts you to wear it or hurts you to pay for it?
It hurts me to pay for it. But it lasts.
Yeah, I don't have any Carhartt. I have some Duluth stuff.
Yeah, Duluth's all right, but Carhartt's superior, unfortunately.
I go back to Disney, the Disney Corporation, which through Baby Yoda is attempting to suck us all into signing up for their streaming service. Is the goal of that corporation's actions the true, the good, the beautiful? For us or for them?
Probably not even for them.
Or is it something else? Because the quote you just read, Thoreau says, we get what we aim at, so you had better aim at the right thing. Well, the reverse of that is you could figure out what people are aiming at. And it might not be for your good. And having some skepticism, I don't know that Thoreau would propose that everybody be a Thoreau and live in the woods. It's just, you read this book and you think, well, he was only a mile or so out of town, a couple miles out of town. This wasn't really roughing it, and you couldn't really do this. Well, I don't know that that's the point. The point isn't that you all go off and build a cabin somewhere. I think the point is it's his experiment. The form of your experiment's going to be different, but you could take an inventory of all the things that you work very, very hard to get and think, do I need this? Do I need that? Do I need that? I was thinking about all the nature stuff. There's a whole lot of nature stuff in here. There's some poetry, too. Well, he's watching pigeons fly by, or he says, I had an appointment with an oak tree.
Yeah.
He's going to go out and look at this oak tree for a while. He's somewhat of a naturalist. Is watching a tree come to life in the spring better than Netflix?
Yes.
Okay. If it is, then why don't more of us think so?
Because the tree doesn't have a marketing budget to control your tastes and to direct you towards it.
Yeah. And Netflix is easier. It takes time and thought and peace and calm in order to walk through your local sacred grove. I like that the Greeks used to have sacred groves all over the place.
Yeah.
But you find your local sacred grove and you walk through it. You're going to have to walk through it a couple of days, probably a month, to see the changes, to see the buds in the spring, to see them pop open, to see the birds making their nest, to follow the trail of the ants as they go to war. He's got a description of ants going to war.
So good.
Which is very good. But you have to have some inner peace to do that.
To how you opened that point was, this was his experiment. He's just at 1 mile out of town, and maybe you can't build a cabin and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is his particular experiment. But he says it in that I think it's the thesis statement. My purpose in going to Walden Pond was not to live cheaply nor to live dearly there, but to transact some private business with the fewest obstacles. You, dear listener, can do that, in whatever form that takes for you. So you have to figure out, one, you have to know what your private business is, and then identify the things that are the obstacles. And then you cut it all clean so that you can do that thing, whatever that may be. And he gives example after example. He talks about education in here. He says, how could youths better learn to live than by at once trying the experiment of living? He's a Harvard man, and he just, in the first 6-7 pages, he impugns the university. What are they trying to do?
So you're sitting in a philosophy class and you're talking about Socrates, and he says this thing, the unexamined life is not worth living for a man. That's the full quote, by the way, for a human. It might be worth it for a pig. And you can just imagine the students dutifully jotting down, bullet point, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Yeah.
And then regurgitating it on the test. But do they ever examine their life? Which is the whole point of it. The point of it is not to digest a bunch of PowerPoint slides. Man, I'm sorry I'm dragging Thoreau into Socrates, but he talks about him too. But Alistair McIntyre made this point once about how modern philosophers, nobody cares about us because nobody makes us drink poison. A philosopher's a bomb thrower. Not literally, but Thoreau's every bit a philosopher. If you read this book and take it seriously, you're going to put it down and say, You're going to look around your life, and you might head for the hills.
Yeah, whatever your hill is, you'll head for it if you're paying attention, I think. He's just a hater. He says, I would rather sit on a pumpkin and have it all to myself than be crowded on a velvet cushion. I'd rather ride on earth in an ox cart with a free circulation than go to heaven in the fancy car of an excursion train and breathe the malaria all the way. I wrote next to that, air travel.
Yeah.
Airplane can't take me anywhere that's worth going to the airport for. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's disgusting to me.
Yeah. What's your limit? How far will you drive before you have to get on a plane?
I don't even know.
For me, it's about 14 hours.
Yeah.
I think I did 21 one day.
No, I can't do that. Yeah, 14 hours is probably about right. And then anything that's more than 14 hours by...
Do you really need to go there?
Ford F-250, yeah, I don't need to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you have a good inner life, by inner life, I mean the stuff that's in your mind, if it's good enough, you don't need to go anywhere because it's always with you. And then you can be in line at Happy Foods or whatever, and you're not bored because you're thinking. So you can be like Thoreau when he's watching the ants fighting and he's thinking of Achilles and Patroclus and he's making these little ants fighting on the hill be as epic as every human war ever fought, because that's the kind of guy that he is. His life has more color. Well, today I went and I cut firewood for my little shack by the lake, and that sounds really boring, but if you're Henry David Thoreau, it isn't.
No.
Wouldn't you like to be like that, so that the tasks that you might have to do for your personal economy are the sorts of things that you like doing? How can you take something that's drudgery, in most people's opinion, and make it glorious?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. How can you do that? I think one thing you can do is realize how basic and necessary that thing is to your existence. Like, he knew that the firewood would warm him twice.
Mm-hmm.
It made him effective in the world around him. He was actually doing something. He wasn't just moving the TPS reports around. It was good work that provided heat for him and forestry services to the forest around him that he loved. And he also knew his worldview was such that he would see some other kind of work that seems higher to normal people as drudgery because it wasn't necessary.
Mm-hmm.
He valued it because of the necessity of boiling water to make his gruel, or cutting the firewood so that he didn't freeze to death. The necessity of the thing made it good. The other stuff is superfluous and false to him, I think.
So for him, the closer it is to being something that, I guess the closer to his actual life, the better.
It made him self-reliant, to quote on Emerson.
Sure. Well, he's growing his own beans, although he doesn't like beans very much.
It's so funny.
Trading it for rice. So if you go to the store to buy your food comes, this is how, I like eating meat, and it comes in a package.
Pre-done, pre-killed.
Pre-killed.
Pre-butchered.
I have a book that shows, I have a book on meat. And I do. And it shows the actual process, what happens to a beef critter, a steer, when it becomes meat. Because you should know that this is where food comes from. It's like when Odysseus, when they have barbecues in Homer, they always give an offering to the gods before they kill the animal and cut it up. And it's an event because they know this is how I get food. And they're actually making it happen. And so it becomes an event. It becomes a sacred event. Just grabbing a bunch of ground beef might be drudgery. Whereas if you raised it on your farm and you were closer to it, I don't know. We might have to ask actual farmers who eat their own food. Is this better?
Yeah, it is.
Or is it just poetically better in Thoreau?
Everybody knows that, right? You grow tomatoes in your backyard, or you grow container tomatoes on your patio. Even if the tomatoes were exactly identical to the ones you get at the store, the fact that you walk out there and saw it when it was small, and then you saw it when it was larger, and then when it was green, and then when it turned red, and then you picked it yourself, and then you wash it, makes it better.
Right. Well, I have some musical instruments that I have built myself, and they're not as good as the factories in China could make, but I made them. When I say I made them, it's not like there are some guitar kits that you can buy where they just give you sheets of lumber.
Yep.
And you have to make it into a guitar shape. This is mostly pre-made, but still I made some stuff. And it's mine and it's better. And when I sit with my little banjo and pluck on it when I have time, I should make more time. It's better because I made it. I put the linseed oil into the wood, I stretched the goat skin over the hoop. It's mine. I did it. It's better.
Yeah, he sees those things that we are being taught that are mundane as very noble and very good. I'm kind of good at that. People give kids career advice. Oh, if you find something, you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, most jobs aren't lovable. But if you can find a way to love them, now you got something.
Mm-hmm.
If you can find a way to be challenged by it and find it to be gratifying, you've got something. And he has a knack of doing that. But of course, there's most things he doesn't find gratifying, and he just rejects them. He values personal, immediate action over delayed gratification. He would rather cut his own firewood right now than do something else to make extra money and pay somebody to deliver firewood to him. He's not okay with that. He tells a little story about the spending of the best part of one's life earning money in order to enjoy a questionable liberty during the least valuable part of it. Reminds me of the Englishman who went to India to make a fortune first in order that he might return to England and live the life of a poet. He should have gone up garret at once. So that's the thing for him.
Yeah, we just watched My Fair Lady. I think there's enough movies made. I think we're done. We don't need to make any more movies.
Here, here. Have we made enough books?
Almost.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe like 3 more. But so we're going through lists of greatest movies. And it was My Fair Lady this past weekend with Henry Higgins. And, well, Henry Higgins is a linguist. And he's spent his life pretty much doing whatever he wants. He's a little bit abrasive. He's a lot abrasive. It's kind of funny. Rex Harrison plays him. And he has this friend, Pickering, Colonel Pickering, who's old and gray-haired and has spent his whole life in India. And thus he's an amateur at the thing that Higgins is the best in the world at.
Yeah.
Because he went off to make his fortune and serve in the British Army and advance the empire, and he's happy to be in Higgins' shadow, but he could have been the guy. He could have pursued his own thing, right? If you want to be the poet, go be the poet.
Take action.
Yeah, when I'm 65, I will retire and take up painting. Good luck. Okay? If you really want to paint, you probably better do it.
Just do it. What are you waiting for? The material conditions for painting aren't going to improve. You still have to put the first stroke on the canvas. You have to do it. Thoreau says, if I have got to drag my trap, I'll take care that it be a light one and does not nip me in a vital part. But perchance it would be wisest never to put one's paw into it.
And the trap would be?
Whatever the heck it is.
Business, the stable job.
Right. Yeah, he said that he could have at one point taken up into business, and if he had worked at it for 10 years, he would have had the misfortune of doing a good business. And then he would have been trapped, because that's not what he wanted to do.
Yeah. There's a quote in my book on page 20 that I both circled and put asterisks around it. So that's one that I really like. That's my technique. The greater part of what my neighbors call good, I believe in my soul to be bad, and if I repent of anything, it is very likely to be my good behavior. He doesn't care what you think. And what's good behavior, I guess what good behavior would be is to do what everybody else just does without really thinking about it. I wonder what it would be like to living in this area and have this guy squatting out on the banks of the pond. You know, crazy Henry David Thoreau, old crazy Henry. What if they called him Hank?
No.
You don't think they did?
No. He's very proper. He's very puritanical. He thinks that there are all these sort of behavioral standards that people need to adhere to. He's got all these dietary restrictions, this sort of dislike of the body. He's very Northeastern puritanical.
I think he's actually more Buddhist, or maybe more Hindu. I think he's read a bunch of the Eastern stuff.
Yeah, he's a toxic mixture of the two, I think.
Which almost doesn't matter, because it's what he thinks is the right thing to do, and he's going to do what he thinks is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Rather than taking a job in a factory. I was thinking about comparing him with the fictional character of Bartleby.
Mm.
And maybe Bartleby's boss, who do scrivening and law work because it's the thing to do. And they just continue at it. And Bartleby at one point doesn't want to do it anymore, says, I prefer not. He should have headed to the woods.
Yeah. Bartleby ultimately doesn't want to do life anymore. But in book 1, or in the chapter Economy, I can't remember exactly where he says it, but Thoreau says that he's doing this because he wants to drive life into a corner. Like, he wants to master the whole thing, the project. He wants to make it submit to his will, you know? And Bartleby is a conscientious objector.
Well, but what I'm saying is Bartleby did not find within the confines of New York life anything that he thought was worthwhile, and so he quits.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the problem was where he was. his compliance, his initial compliance, because he was a perfect employee, his initial compliance was the problem. I have a quote here that I think that I really like also in my book, page 24. None can be an impartial or wise observer of human life, but from the vantage ground of what we should call voluntary poverty. In other words, if you are full on into the stream of modern life, you probably can't judge it very well. So to use my Disney Plus example, if you are watching streaming movies all the time, every night you come home and you sit in front of the box or front of the flat screen and watch whatever they're feeding you, and then go talk about The Mandalorian the next day around the water cooler, and somebody says, maybe you shouldn't watch anything. Are you going to be able to hear the question? Are you going to be able to think about it? You have to be able to step back a little bit and have some distance. And then he says, right below that, about being a philosopher. Philosopher means lover of wisdom. Socrates was a real philosopher. Not all the philosophers you read were actually real philosophers. To be a philosopher is not merely to have subtle thoughts, nor even to found a school, but so to love wisdom as to live according to its dictates, a life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity, and trust. It is to solve some of the problems of life not only theoretically, but practically. The success of great scholars and thinkers is commonly a courtier-like success, not kingly, not manly. They make shift to live merely by conformity, practically as their fathers did, and are no sense the progenitors of a nobler race of men.
Practically.
Yeah.
It's about action. It's all about action for him, and right action.
Right. So if you think the unexamined life isn't worth living, then you better go live an examined life. If you're not doing it.
And you can't examine it if it's covered up with layers and layers of artifice, popular fashion, trains, artificial conveyance.
He's not a fan of the trains.
He wants you to be close to reality. He talks about that he wants not a nihilometer like Herodotus talks about, but a realometer, a realometer. That future ages might know how deep a freshet of shams and appearances had gathered from time to time. And he wants people to be rooted in reality so they can see everything and see themselves. And then once they see that, they can transcend it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is angry stuff. Should never let your high schooler read it. What if your high schooler read it and said, I have to live these convictions that I have? Danger.
I had a little clique. Clique? Do you say cliques?
I say click. I'm from Illinois, though.
I do too. I had some friends when I was in school, and we read this. I carried a copy of this around with me every day for about 3 years. And my friend Craig read it, and this is absolutely true. We were in the 7th grade. He finished the book. He closed it. He stood up in Miss Westrope's class, walked down in the hall and out the door and down the street, and the cops picked him up 3 miles from school.
He was done.
He was done. And I'll tell you what, they got him back in the building, but he was gone, and he never came. I mean, his body was there, but he was never back. Stuff didn't work out very well for him. Things have been difficult for that cat. But, yeah, he walked out, man.
What was his name?
Craig.
All right, so Craig. Didn't work out for Craig. Is this a dangerous book?
It's a super dangerous book. It can be just an apology for idleness, frankly. It can be an apology for not being industrious. I mean, there's a certain good in industry. There's a certain good in productivity. There's a certain good in striving, but we have to do it where it makes sense. I think that Thoreau probably strived very hard to make a good book of this. I mean, how many untold hours did he have in this? How many edits were there? We'll never know, but there was a striving and a lot of work put into this book. But he doesn't talk about that. He talks about a lady that gave him was going to give him a doormat, and he said, "No, if I have it, I'll have to shake it out. No thanks." It could be misconstrued, because he doesn't really talk a lot about the virtuous stuff that he did work out very, very hard. He doesn't talk about the hits that he takes in public. I'm sure people thought he was nuts, talked bad about him. He didn't fit in. He had to have been a social outcast, at least to some degree. He doesn't talk about that.
Was there a Mrs. Thoreau?
Right. There's no Mrs. Thoreau. There are no Johnny and Susie Thoreau.
So it's a book by a solitary man, not too interested in family. I consciously didn't look up his life story. I just wanted to take the book as it was. It doesn't seem like there's a girlfriend.
No. I think the poet that comes and visits him is Emerson.
Yeah.
He talks about a poet would come and stay for a week or 2 weeks, and they would talk late into the night. And so he had some good friends, but no spouse.
Yeah, so marriage and family is not one of the things that's valued in this book. For me, that's a big thing mixing, and that might drag you back into society. Mm-hmm. Although I think you probably have to work it out for yourself. How do you do marriage and family, do it the right way, see the value in it, and not do it as, like everyone else does.
Right.
As making more cogs in the machine.
Yeah, he tells a story about the Irish family, the guy.
It's always the Irish, too. I thought that was funny. Yeah. All the low-class people in this book are the Irish.
Yeah. I think they rented a shack, but they had rich food. And they were poor people, but they had butter. And he's like, why is this guy going out and busting his ass so he can have butter? And he's got these little filthy kids, and they just live in squalor, but they rent the house, and they spend as much on butter in a year as his house even cost him. He's like, what is he doing? He doesn't paint a good picture of family life. He doesn't say anything about, it was probably hidden to him that Ma and Pa delighted in the kids and were happy when the kids had butter. Like there's something about that, he that stuff's lost on him. Might he have been a little autistic?
Well, I don't know. Maybe. It's certainly odd, strange. But the thing that it can do is his strangeness can point the way or can give you permission to follow your own strangeness a bit more than you normally would. I don't know. They had the Super Bowl recently.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you how much time I have spent in my life on football. Just so many years paying attention, so much wasted time sitting in 3 or 4 hour chunks in front of a television watching these games. And you know what? It was like 3 or 4 years ago, but it was hard for me to quit it. Because when you quit it, now you're strange. Now you don't have anything to talk about with people.
Right.
Right? So I'll go to gatherings of other folks, and they all want to talk about the Bears and the Packers or whoever the college football teams are. So in order just to disengage from that thing, you have to take a stand. And that's such a small thing, but it was hard. I'm sorry, I sound like a wimp, but just to not care about that stuff is very freeing, has been very good for me. But, now how do I talk to people?
It makes it tougher. But, you could find your own tribe. So we have to cultivate our own relationships with our own tribe. I think he's one of us. He talks about the great books, Karl.
He does. But he only had one book with him, right? Homer?
Yeah. He talks about reading it in the Greek. So good. Did you remember this piece? He says, the student may read Homer or Aeschylus in the Greek without danger of dissipation or luxuriousness. So he doesn't like this luxuriousness. This is where he's a Puritan. For it implies that he is in some measure emulating their heroes and consecrate morning hours to their pages. The heroic books, even if printed in the character of our mother tongue, will always be in a language dead to degenerate times, and we must laboriously seek the meaning of each word and line, conjecturing a larger sense than common use permits out of what wisdom and valor and generosity we have. The modern cheap and fertile press, with all its translations, has done little to bring us nearer to the heroic writers of antiquity. They seem as solitary, and the letter in which they are printed is rare and curious as ever. But I think he thinks to read things in the original and do the translations is heroic.
Right. Somewhere he says, I'm looking for the quote right now. Why do you read these things?
To read well, to read true books in a true spirit is a noble exercise and one that will task the reader more than any exercise which the customs of the day esteem.
And it's a way to get in touch with the heroism of the ages.
Yeah.
I think so. Obviously, part of online group books, right? You read these things and they change you. They open to you possibilities of existence that might have been covered over. I mean, reading Walden does this. He's like Achilles sitting down in his lodge by the beach. And this is one of the things you have to...
He's like Achilles. He's just like,
Yeah.
I prefer not to fight.
Well, Achilles and Bartleby. I thought Bartleby was like Achilles. When you read the Iliad, your first reaction to Achilles is, what a jerk. And you might come back to that. You might circle back to that in the end. It's up to you. But you'll be missing the point if you don't see that it is Achilles' strength of character that allows him to sit out of this war, which is the thing that he really wants to do. If Achilles were not strong, he'd be fighting like everybody else. And you might not like the reason he doesn't fight, and you might not like the bad effects, but it takes strength of character to take your ball and go home sometimes. It's not petulance. It's, no, this is what I think's the right thing. I'm going to go do it. And you don't care what anybody else thinks about it. That's a good message. It's not going to work out for everybody.
He does what he wants to do without regard to what other people are going to think about it. He has the courage of his conviction. He marches to the beat of his own drummer, for sure.
Now, he says some things that I was reading it and I thought, Hamburg. About debt.
Yeah.
So he gives you an accounting in this book, beautifully formatted in my edition, of everything that he's spending.
I love his accounting. I love it.
The house cost him $28.12.5. And then he's telling you what his food cost for 8 months, what his oil cost, how much he spent on rice. And he's talking about it in comparison to what you might learn in school. If you go to school and you sit and study this, the consequence is that while he, the student, is reading Adam Smith, Ricardo, and Say, he runs his father into debt irretrievably.
Yep.
So you go study economics in college while you're financing your tuition with debt. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Maybe you ought to walk out of school and build your $28 house and get a secondhand copy of Adam Smith and be better off.
He says it again and again. Go up the garret at once. If you want to learn how to live, start trying to live. He's big on that. He says we've got a pretty good school system at the time. He says it's pretty good. But he says, it is time that we had uncommon schools, that we did not leave off our education when we begin to be men and women. It is time that the villages were universities, and their elder inhabitants the fellows of universities, with leisure, if they are indeed so well off, to pursue liberal studies the rest of their lives. Shall the world be confined to one Paris or one Oxford forever? Cannot students be boarded here and get a liberal education under the skies of Concord? Can we not hire some Abelard to lecture to us? Alas, what with foddering the cattle and tending the store, we are kept from school too long, and our education is sadly neglected. In this country, the village should, in some respects, take the place of the nobleman of Europe. This is Emerson's project in the, what's the name of that essay we read, or that speech we read?
The American Scholar.
The American Scholar. Yeah, this is the project, The American Scholar. We have an opportunity. To make the village the university and create uncommon schools.
You could, but what you need is leisure.
Yeah, he says so.
And in order to have leisure, you have to not work as hard.
And to not work as hard, according to Thoreau, you need to want a whole lot less. Stop wanting unimportant things. Want important things, which is a few unbroken hours in the morning with that book. Conversation with the friends. Your appointment with the tree.
Right. He says, talking about economic efficiency, where is this division of labor to end, and what object does it finally serve? No doubt another may also think for me. We can keep dividing up our jobs in order that you can make more Model T Fords and more widgets and more stuff. But what's the point of all of that stuff if it makes you not think? I thought it was a funny line. He's talking about railroads and telegraphs. That's what was happening in 1842. The information highway, I guess, not superhighway. And they are thinking of running a telegraph line from Maine to Texas, but they never figure out whether Maine and Texas have anything to talk about. So they're running telegraph lines all over the place at this time, and this is before the Transcontinental Railroad. It's all to come. So connecting everything so that everyone may communicate, but what are they talking about? And so that you can get a telegram. Lindbergh has landed in wherever he landed, I forget.
Yeah, Point Du Hoc. I have no idea.
Why do you care?
Yeah.
Most of what is transmitted to you, as I sit in front of my computer with all the screens and everything, most of what is transmitted to you is diversion. I could imagine Walker Percy writing a little story now where you're sitting in front of your computer and you've got like Fox News on one, CNN on the other, maybe InfoWars on the middle. I don't know. And you're just taking in all sorts of stuff. And then suddenly one of the screens flashes and says, "How are you? How is it with you?
Yeah.
Who are you? What are you doing?" That's never what comes through. What comes through is, "Oh, look at those people over there. Aren't they silly?" Or, "Isn't that horrible?" Or, "Isn't that funny?" Or kitten videos or something. All sorts of distractions that you never needed to know in the first place. The ancients, Augustine would have called it gossip. The mere desire for novelty, for curiosity's advice, at least for him, continually wanting to know the new stuff, to the exclusion of your own inner life, is a vice.
Thoreau says he loves a broad margin to his life. He wants to keep a broad margin around it and protect it from those things. He said in the first summer he didn't even read. He read no books that first summer. He hoed beans. And he said often I did better than this, where he would just lay on his ass and watch the sun come up and watch the trees. Because he wanted to be he says, "I love a broad margin to my life." He wants to be protected from all that. He doesn't care what Texas and Maine had to say or what the newspaper in Concord had. It wasn't his life. So he wanted a moat around his life. That ain't bad advice, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, what is the thing that's important? It's your life, right?
He says that we have to be very, very, I think that he says we have to be very careful that our life isn't made for us or taken from us. The trip to Fitchburg story, I think, tells this pretty well. One of his buddies says, "Hey, let's go to Fitchburg, kind of the next town over. We'll take the train in tomorrow. We'll take the train into Fitchburg." His buddy has to go work so that he can buy his ticket. So his buddy gets up the next day and works all day and then gets paid. And then the morning after that, he gets up and buys his ticket. And then he pulls in on the train in Fitchburg like at 10:30 the next morning. Well, Thoreau just started walking to Fitchburg the instant they decided they were going to go. He got there the night before and had already been there for 12 hours when his buddy pulled up and met him at the train station. Not only did it not cost him anything, it didn't, money, time is money. Like, we trade chunks of our lives for these tickets, Yeah. So he got to retain that chunk of his life. And so he profited in his experience between Concord and Fitchburg, walking the track and seeing everything and stopping and visit with one of the Irishmen working the rail on the way, and was richer for it.
Yeah, if you could figure out your hourly rate for whatever it is that you do to earn your daily bread, and don't think of it as an hourly rate. Like, flip it over. Think of it as the hours of your life that you have to give. So then you go to the store and maybe you want a new gadget or a new car or something. How much of your life does this cost? It's like
could cost a lot.
In The Princess Bride, when they're torturing Wesley. I hope you've seen this movie.
I have.
I've just sucked out 1 year of your life. How does that feel? That should be what the car salesman tells you.
Yep.
You could have, you could have this $50,000 car, but it's going to cost you 6 years of your life. Is it still worth it to you?
Yeah, that ain't good. And then let me flip that. Towards the end of my career in my previous life, I was making quite a bit of money. And it gets to the point where if I stay and work another hour, I can have somebody clean the house. Or if I stay and work another hour, I can have somebody mow the yard and weed the flower beds and still have money left over. I could spend 2 hours fixing the leaky faucet under the leak under the sink, or I could work an hour here and have the plumber do it.
I might still hire the plumber.
I did that for a long time, and it uncoupled me from my life. It uncoupled me from my home and my surroundings, and it changed my life into whatever the heck it was I was doing there at my business.
Mm-hmm.
I ultimately sold that business because I was mighty uneasy in it. I had certain reasons for being uneasy in it that I could put my finger on. I could make you a list. December 28th, the day we closed on it, I could have made you a list of things that made me uneasy about it. But now that I've been out of it, that list is a lot longer than I thought it was. It's nice to have the income to be able to make those sort of economic decisions. But life is not an economic decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. There's something good about working on your own home.
Mm-hmm.
There's something good about hoeing your own row. There's something very, very good about it, whether or not it's profitable. Or
knowing your own children.
Right.
Which is, I think, of great value. I know my kids.
It's because our children are better.
Yeah. I want to read a somewhat lengthy quote here about education. If I wished a boy to know something about the arts and sciences, for instance, I would not pursue the common course, which is merely to send him into the neighborhood of some professor, where anything is professed and practiced but the art of life. To survey the world through a telescope or a microscope, and never with his natural eye. To study chemistry, and not learn how his bread is made, or mechanics, and not learn how it is earned. To discover new satellites to Neptune, and not detect the motes in his eyes, or to what vagabond he is a satellite himself, or to be devoured by the monsters that swarm all around him while contemplating the monsters in a drop of vinegar. Which would have advanced the most at the end of a month? The boy who had made his own jackknife from the ore which he had dug and smelted, reading as much as would be necessary for this, or the boy who had attended the lectures on metallurgy at the Institute in the meanwhile and had received a Rogers penknife from his father? Obviously, we're not all going to dig ore.
Why not?
Because there's no ore near me. We don't have mountains.
Right.
We're flat. It would be a rough life if you could not buy stuff that others had made, sure. And there wouldn't be a whole lot of leisure in it. Subsistence existence is not leisure. But it sure would be good to get a little bit more of this stuff closer to home.
Yeah.
Is that a moderate position? Or am I selling out?
No, we need to be moderate here, I think, because he is not moderate. We can't all be him. And it's probably not a good idea to do what he did. And by the way, he only did it for...
Yeah, he did it for 2
months.
years.
Yeah, 2.5 years at most. So he abandoned the project as well. But when we can do good things, we should do good things.
Yeah, the book is not a guide for your life. It's a challenge to your life.
Here is a Rogers penknife. Apparently Rogers was a company in Sheffield, England. Here's one for $60 on eBay.
Is it from 1840?
No, it looks like it's from like 1890. It's really hard for me to not buy this.
I have a knife that I made out of a bit of rebar.
Yeah.
We built a forge, have a little anvil. I think I pounded this one out on a bit of railroad rail. It took a lot of work, and it looks like an orc knife.
Right.
I haven't really sharpened it yet. Right now it's a butter knife. But it's recognizably a knife. You know, I bent the thing around to make a handle. I didn't make a real handle. I just curved part of it and made a handle. And it sits in the hand pretty well. I made it. It's ugly, but I could use it.
I made a meat cleaver when I was 14.
Do you still have it?
Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah. And I made a machete. I don't know where the machete is.
Yeah, I remember I was reading about Browning, the gun inventor.
Mm.
His dad went away for a trip, and so he made his first gun.
My aunt Beulah, we called her Aunt Boob. She had a brass bed, and the bed was like squeaking real bad, and finally it just like broke. So she starts looking, and some of it was missing. And one of her boys had taken some chunks of it, some little pieces of tubing and things that were in this brass bed, and had made a .22 rifle out of it. Here's you some Rogers County shit, Karl. I know you like this stuff. My mom came out to this acreage that we've got, and Charity and I were clearing fence row, and there was a rose bush, a wild rose, in the fence row that had to come out. It was as big as a mid-sized car, and the trunk of the thing was probably, where it came out of the ground was probably as big as my thigh, and then it broke into several different. It's huge, and just deadly. We cut that thing out of there. And my mom said when she was a kid, there was a rose bush on her like that on the property they lived on, and she said they told her that the people that lived there before her, one of the guys lost his arm in an accident, and they buried it in the yard and planted that rose bush on top of it. I have no idea if that's true, but it's a good story.
Is that how you get your roses to grow?
I guess. I said, is that true? She says, oh, heck, I don't know. She didn't think anything of it. She just told the story and then just walked off.
That's the way things are out there.
Yeah.
People burying body parts to grow their flowers.
He has a chapter here called Sounds, and he just talks about the things he can hear. With no companions, he could really hear things. And then the next chapter is Solitude, and he starts out, this is a delicious evening when the whole body is one sense and imbibes delight through every pore. I remember some of those evenings. When the temperature's just right, you got your mind right. Mm-hmm. I remember I used to go fishing with my sister. We'd walk to this farm pond or that farm pond. And when the weather was just right, and the humidity was just right, she could be on the other side of this pond. And the pond might be 10 acres. And you could talk in a completely normal speaking voice and hear each other loud and clear across that pond. Mm-hmm. No shouting, just talking like this. And you could hear each other 200 yards away.
But you won't notice that if you're looking at your phone.
No, I miss it.
There's a whole lot that you won't notice. And is what's on your phone better?
No.
Keeping up with current events. It's like Maine keeping up with Texas. What does Maine have to do with Texas? What do current events have to do with you?
I had this talk with my oldest daughter about current events and politics, and she was saying that one of her acquaintances had no interest in politics, and she got on to her about it. Well, you should know. And she's almost 18, so she's very interested in voting and so on. And I'm just not. I'm not really that interested in the amount of time, I'm going to get hate mail about this probably, to cast 1/325 millionth of a decision in a national election just isn't worth the time it takes me to go to and fro. I've said this on the podcast before too. I mostly don't believe that I'm competent to vote. If we're going to do a bond election about the new low water dam out at the wastewater treatment, whatever, I don't know anything about that. Mm-hmm. My vote, no matter what I think, no matter what I tell myself, is frankly going to be capricious because I don't know anything about that stuff.
Sure, that's a challenge. If you go in, and I will be voting just because I feel like it's my license to complain.
Well, okay, fair enough.
I live in Cook County, so whichever way you, dear listener, think that I might vote, it won't matter. It's right. It's a monolithic county, so it doesn't really matter if I go vote, but I'm going to do it.
Now, Thoreau would say, you're free to gripe, that you don't have to go and punch a hole in the ballot or draw your check mark or make your X, and it is your right and lot in life to gripe.
I feel better about griping, having actually gone.
Fair enough.
But you get this long ballot, and you might know 3 of the candidates. Heck, do you even know who your congressman is?
I do.
I happen to know who mine is. He's a friend of a friend.
You need to look into your friends a little more. I don't know who my state house rep is.
It's all those Chicago Catholics. They all know each other.
Yeah.
But I don't know who my state house people are. I should.
I don't either.
Right? If you don't know that, well, you're probably going to go vote for the president because they're big personalities, but you won't know any of the down ticket things.
Yeah.
And somehow you're going to make reasonable decisions on this. Don't take it too seriously. If you're going to do it for the purpose of complaining, you do it that once a year or once every 2 years or however long you have elections in your area. But the rest of the year, what good does it do to follow all of the current events? Is it going to change your convictions?
Yeah, I can hear all the normies yelling right now.
I don't know. It's good theater. It's entertaining, but I got better things to do. Wake up and read the New York Times every morning.
Yeah.
I have better things to do, and it's not going to matter. Come November, my convictions will be the same. So I don't need to spend a year following all the people.
It doesn't serve your life, Thoreau would say, I think.
Yeah, I want to read the quote that probably everyone's heard a little bit of. And for me, this is on page 96. This is what I lived for. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms, and if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it, and publish its meanness to the world, or, if it were sublime, to know it by experience, and be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is of the devil or of God, and have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief end of man here to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Shall we live meanly like ants? Though the fable tell us that we were long ago changed into men. Oh, I could keep going on and on.
Wonderful prose.
He doesn't want to take anybody else's word for it. He doesn't want to succumb to conventional religion. Somewhat hastily, he says, have concluded that the chief end of man is here is to glorify God. For me, something that struck me earlier was his quote about Christianity and agriculture. In other words, we like Christianity because it helps the agriculture. You know, good Christian men and women get the harvest in, but that's not the religion. That's somewhat hasty.
Yeah, he also says we weren't afraid of the dark until we had Christianity and candles, too.
Yeah, he's a non-conventional believer, which, you know, might raise your hackles, which is probably his point. But if you just go and do what everyone else does, you're not going to suck out the marrow of life.
Yeah, part of his project here is not just suck out the marrow of life, but actually identify what it is.
Yeah.
By paring away chunks that he suspects ain't it. You know, it's like a sculpture. You know, how did you do that? Well, I just knocked off all the bits of marble that didn't look like David. And
yeah.
You know, he's trying to knock off all the bits that don't seem like life and really reduce it, like he says, reduce it to its lowest terms and find out just exactly where it is at its core. I think we can all probably take a little life inventory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are we doing here? The superfluity.
Yeah.
And get right down to the thing.
Yeah. I was listening to Bruce Springsteen's Glory Days yesterday. Yeah. He's walking out of a bar. His friend's walking in. They go back in and have beers, and they're talking about glory days that are all gone.
Yeah.
And their life is pretty much, I mean, it's a really depressing song. This is all you end up doing. Boy, remember those days? No, we're not doing anything now. No, nothing's good now. But remember that time in high school when we played that baseball game? Come on. You could do better than that.
You know, I was saying, I remember, fishing with my sister, and we could, to just talk across this pond, and I can hear it. And on those evenings when you're just like a raw nerve, and you can just take it all in, like the first part of that chapter, Solitude. I often wonder if there's something that happens to the human mind as we get older that makes it harder for us to do those things. Scar tissue and weights we carry and dead neurons. And too much mercury in our shellfish or whatever, and then here you are, in your 5th decade or whatever, and it's harder to have that cool summer breeze stand your whole person on end.
I think there's probably some of that for sure. I mean, there's the glory days thing, but I think probably, what's your average 50-year-old doing?
Yeah.
It's the peak of your professional life. You're going to be at your job most of the day. Your kids will be, if you have them, they'll be 15 to 20, maybe older. You wake up in the morning, it might be a day of quiet desperation. I hear what you're saying. I mean, there's memories from when, like the summers when I was a kid seemed like they were endless.
Yeah.
And now they seem like nothing. You close your eyes and it's November again. But it might be that the reason the summer was endless was because I was doing something every day. And the reason the summers go so quickly is because you get stuck in a routine where you're doing the same thing every day. There's nothing to remember.
Ice flowers.
Ice flowers.
Yeah, it'd be rainy, some groundwater out there, above freezing. And then like the next night, it'll get down to 26 degrees, 20 degrees. Mm-hmm. And the ground just pushes these curlicues of ice up out of a crack in the ground. Have you seen these things? Do you have these in Illinois?
We have slush and potholes.
Oh my gosh. You don't have wild enough temperature swings up there probably. I remember I would see those things when I was a young person and just stare at them endlessly. I don't have to do a screen share here. It doesn't help the podcast listeners at all. Look at these things.
Oh no, we don't have those.
Yeah. Go look up frost flower, ice flower. We'd take a knee and just pluck one up and eat it. I'm still here, so it must have been okay. It's sort of that wonder and openness to experience and so on is hard to maintain forever. Hard to maintain.
Yeah, it's worth trying.
It's worth
right?
trying. Yeah,
it's worth trying. The way to not make it happen is to not know that it's happening.
How about them Packers?
Hooray, more football. Man, I love that so much, but there's so much that you miss.
Yeah.
When we started missing it, so I went to a college that has a notable football team, and so autumn weekends were all about that team. And you can't schedule anything on those days. And I started to drift away from it. I started to become a football heretic, a football nonconformist. And part of the reason why is because my lovely wife, who I hope is listening, likes to go to these little towns and just walk around and see the craft shows and the little town festivals. And those are all in fall weekends. And if you have to budget your whole weekend for the NFL and the NCAA, you can't do any of that stuff. No, you have to go tailgate. You have to go do the thing rather than going to the corn festival, which if you would do it and you would go see these little towns and see a little bit of what their life is. And I'm a people watcher. I like watching people. I don't necessarily like talking to them very much, I'm a little reserved, but I like sitting in the corner and watching people go by and seeing what their lives are like. Well, you got to go see them. So that was the start of it. There was so much of what I think was more authentic and better life that was cut off by, following sports all the time.
Yeah. There
might be more out there. And I know probably angry people are going to write in and say, what, football's good? Okay. Fine. Not for me. Not for me.
I would say playing football would be 1,000,000 times better than watching it.
It hurts, though.
Hurts so good. Be better off to join the flag football league down there at the whatever and spend those Saturdays doing that, probably.
Make it more your own activity. I'm sorry, I'm dragging us back to Thoreau, but make it more your own. Suck the marrow out of life. Sitting there passive, watching other people play a game. Sure, it's fun. I did it. I know it's fun. But there's things that are funner.
Yeah. Thoreau's fun.
Yeah.
He says, I think he's funny. He makes me laugh out loud some. He says, I had more visitors while I lived in the woods than at any other period in my life. By that, I mean I had some.
Yeah. Nobody ever comes to see Henry David Thoreau. What would that have been like?
Yeah, terrible. He's like, would you like some?
Hank.
I boiled some peas. He talks about a French-Canadian woodcutter that he would hang out with from time to time. And he told him the story of Plato's bird, Plato's definition of a man.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story? So Plato...
Featherless biped.
Featherless biped, and one exhibited a cock plucked and called it Plato's man. And the French-Canadian said he thought it an important difference that the knees bent the wrong way.
That's true.
He was more interested in that more practical thing than all the philosophical turnings that you could come up with, trying to define what definitions were. He really liked that. I read a chunk to Charity last night. This little chunk here. I think he's like, Virgil wrote all this wonderful pastoral poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this smells like Virgil to me. There, the sun lighted me to hoe beans, pacing slowly backward and forward over that yellow gravelly upland between the long green rows, 15 rods. The one end terminating in a shrub oak copse where I could rest in the shade, the other in a blackberry field where the green berries deepened their tints by the time I had made another bout. Removing the weeds, putting fresh soil about the bean stems and encouraging this weed which I had sown, making the yellow soil express its summer thought in bean leaves and blossoms rather than in wormwood and piper and millet grass, making the earth say beans instead of grass. I think that whole thing is wonderful. He says that the beans were a thought expressed of the soil, and he was making the earth say beans.
Yeah.
Instead of grass. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. That is, there's some poem, I think it might be by your guy, Walt Whitman, about an oak tree, a live oak, furiously shouting green leaves.
Yeah.
That the whole world's an expression of mind somehow. And that the expression of the earth is beans.
Made it say beans.
Yep.
By his own hand. He's got a whole chapter about the bean field. And It's great. It's a lot like John McPhee. We're going to have to read some John McPhee. Or McPhee's like him. He says, when he was weeding those with his hoe, he says, many a lusty crest, waving Hector, that towered a whole foot above his crowding comrades, fell before my weapon and rolled in the dust. He's talking about weeding.
Yeah. The roll in the dust is, so when people in the Iliad die, they're sometimes notably described as rolling in the dust. Yeah, so he's quoting there. Yeah, this is such a good book. If you haven't read it, it's an American classic. It's a classic. I think Russians ought to read it. I think it's a book that ought to be read by just about everybody. It's so much fun. It'll challenge you. It will make you think. It's the sort of book, and these are the best books. I said this a few times. We did the Venn diagram last time. A good book is a book that you want to throw across the room. Now, fine, it's true. Not every book that you wish to throw across the room is a good book. But a good book, one that's good for you, not one that's necessarily just pleasant, but a book that is good for you is going to challenge you, and it's going to make you say, Henry David Thoreau, what are you talking about? And you're going to mark it up, and you're going to think, how could that be true? And maybe you end up disagreeing, but you're going to have to battle him to disagree with him. That's a good book.
How in the world can this guy not take delight in food?
I don't know. He delights in everything else of nature, but he doesn't care for eating.
Yeah, he says, the wonder is how you, and how I can live this slimy, beastly life, eating and drinking. He says, what?
Yeah, I might part company on that.
I mean, he's such a prig about certain things. Like no coffee, no tea, no tobacco, no drink. I mean, he drinks water. He eats hasty pudding, which for him was rice and like brown rice and cornmeal just boiled up, and he just eat it.
All right, let me come to his defense. I had this conversation in the gym with a gentleman on Monday because I train his wife, and he came in for a session. Hopefully he'll be back. And she drinks coffee all day long. I drink coffee all day long. And Morty's like, well, why are you drinking the coffee? All your caffeine receptors are dead. They've long given up the ghost. Yeah, that's true. But if I don't drink the coffee, I get terrible headaches. So he says, you're an addict. Yeah. Would it be better if I never drank coffee?
No.
Would it be better if I drank coffee once a week on Sunday morning?
No.
Tell me why.
'Cause I delight in it all day long.
At 10 o'clock at night?
Oh.
It does nothing for me. It does not wake me up.
No, I can drink coffee and put it on the bedside table and then function immediately. I like it.
So do I.
So shoot me, David, HDT. He says, not that food which entereth into the mouth defileth a man, but the appetite with which it is eaten.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very puritanical like that. But he's, he talks about the Bhagavad Gita and, all these Hindus, Hindoo.
Yeah, that's how they used to spell it.
Yeah. So he's very Eastern in some ways, but he's still got a lot of Plymouth Rock in him, man.
Yeah. A real nice quote about the classics. We talked about it earlier. He says, this is one of those ones that I circled and put asterisks by. They only talk of forgetting them who never knew them. Talking about the classics. We don't need this stuff. We don't need Homer. We don't need Virgil. We don't need, any of these people. We don't need Shakespeare.
Right.
They only talk of forgetting them who never knew them. True. I thought that was good. Because once you know these things, like this book, this darn book, which I poked a couple of lines from way back in 1987, finally read it here in 2020.
Had you never read it all before?
No, not the whole
I'll
thing.
be darned.
It's going to be stuck in my head. How could you forget it after you've read it? How could you say, nope, no one ever needs to read that thing again?
I want to testify, Karl.
Go ahead.
Like I said, I carried this book around with me every day for years, 2, 3, 4 years, probably age 12 to 15, maybe 13 to 16, something like that. I couldn't find that copy, by the way. It's boxed up somewhere. I still have it, but I couldn't find it. I ended up reading it on Kindle, which sucks. And then when I was 22, I got married. And I read it again. Right after I got married. Right after Charity and I got married. And at that time, I was pre-med and probably was going to go to medical school. I didn't know it at the time, but they were letting everyone in because we were afraid the baby boomers were going to overwhelm the healthcare system. So probably could have. I was on the way, and most of my friends at that time ended up are physicians and now on. I read this book, and I started kind of looking at what physicians' lives were like and realized that I did not want to have that. Thoreau had me look at the career path I was on and discard it. I actually wrote an essay about this in my plan, the plan Charity and I set out when we were 22 years old. And the plan was to find a way to make a living and make a good living, but with as few compromises as possible. So it was clear to me that I probably would need to be self-employed and that we needed to live frugally and we needed to save as much money as we possibly could, because Thoreau taught me that we sell wholesale our life to buy things at retail.
Yes.
You sell chunks of your life by the hour, or if you're a salaryman, you sell whole years for these tickets, these coupons we call money, and then you buy stuff retail. I was actually frightened of it. And didn't finish college as a result. We ended up kind of putting a bow on that later, but walked out of there one November, stood up out of biochem lab and walked out and never went back in the building. By God, we did what we said we were going to do. That essay is actually on the Online Great Books website, blog. When I moved out of the offices of the business I sold 2 years ago, I found that essay. I had all my papers from college in there, and I found that essay, and I did OCR on it and published it back out there. The life he describes is not the life I can live. His experiment is not an experiment I could live or carry out. But he was an enormous influence on me. I concretely took action on what I read in this book, documented having done it, and 23 years later we could look back and see how it panned out. Pretty good. I owe him so much.
Yeah. How good would it be for the young people that you love out there, dear listener, or perhaps yourself, to just, I don't know, take a Walden weekend shut everything off. Who am I? What do I want to do? What do I really want to do? How do I want to spend my life? And then make some plans and do it, rather than, everybody goes to college, everybody does this, everyone gets a student loan, everyone gets a mortgage, what everyone does is, maybe it's not what you should do. And maybe it is what you should do, but only after you've thought about it and affirmed it as a good, rather than just going on autopilot. And I've had a few of those moments in my life, and these changes, it's a minor one, just the abandoning of sports. It was a minor one, but it was hard. There have been other ones that have been harder.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting out of the academic world, that was kind of hard to write that email saying, no, I'm not interested and I don't want to do any more classes. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but it's hard to get your train off the track. It's easier to go down the rails. But what if the rails aren't where you want to go? It's better not to have ever gone that way.
Yep. Yeah, if you go to onlinegreatbooks.com, well, you should go and join our little waiting list. But you can hit the little search thing there, and you can search up Making an Entrepreneur. That's the little thing I wrote in April of 1998 about this. I owe him a whole bunch. My family does. I think the United States does. He's distinctly American.
Mm-hmm.
He's nonconformist. He's an original thinker, and was a thorn in the side of almost everyone who met him. But love the guy.
I'm flipping through these quotes and chuckling about, he's got 1 chair for himself, 2 for friendship, 3 for society. You only need 3 chairs.
Yeah.
I bet he was a pain.
But I'm so glad that in the spring of 54, he borrowed an axe and he walked out in the woods and started cutting down trees to make a shack to live in. And then took the time and the care to write it down all so beautifully so that we could see what was going on in the mind of that guy.
Yep. So you should go read it. You can get yourself a copy, probably for not very much. There's free copies on Archive, but you have to read them on a gadget. Go get it. It's pretty easy reading, I think.
Is he a communist?
Would it make the book worse if he were? No, a communist would say no, because he does it on his own.
Right.
This is not enforced.
You
don't have to go in the woods. You don't have to live in poverty, but maybe you ought to think about it. I think he's a monk.
Yeah.
He's a non-Christian monk. He's in his hermitage, and it's where he's able to be himself. That's the whole point of a hermitage.
Is he anti-capitalist?
Yes, I would say so. But what does the anti mean? Again, is it anti as in he doesn't want to play the game, or is it anti in that nobody should be allowed to play the game?
Yeah, I don't think he cares what anybody else does.
Right.
I really don't. He just reports on what he does, and that's good enough for him. He broke out for Walden in 1854, I think is what it was. And I think that this right here, in many ways, marks the end of the original American project. There's a lot about it that makes me very sad.
Well, each generation has to make their own thing, right? The thing about culture, attitudes of life, whatever you think that's distinctive. So I have this quote up here for me, it's 211. It's in Baker Farm section. He was happy that he'd come to America, that here he could get tea and coffee and meat every day. And then Thoreau says, but the only true America is that country where you are at liberty to pursue such a mode of life as may enable you to do without these, and where the state does not endeavor to compel you to sustain the slavery and war and other superfluous expenses which directly or indirectly result from the use of such things. Right? So there's a vision of America that he's got. It's where you're free not to participate. All right, so take that as a goal. If you think there's something of value of it, this is what some guy thought in 1845. Well, 2020 needs to be reconvinced or rediscover it or come to it on their own terms. It's not like a building which just endures in the town. Philosophy every generation needs to be convinced of it.
Yeah, got to blow the dust off of it and take it for your own again.
Yeah. Books only live when they're read.
There at the end of the book, Karl, he says, there's not one of my readers who has yet lived a whole human life. If you're reading it, you're still alive, you know? You haven't done the whole thing. I really like that. And then back to this sort of American project and how he sees the United States. At the very end, he says, it is said that the British Empire is very large and respectable, and that the United States are a first-rate power. Almost to a man, everyone would now say the United States is.
Yep.
To him, it was a confederation. Sorry, guys. Of states that stood on their own and had their own character and abrogated some powers to the federal government. And that they were a set of United States, and that there was no such thing as the United States. This, I think, starts to mark the end of the original American project.
Yeah, anyone who lived through the Revolution was nearly dead by this time.
Yeah. The United States are a first-rate power, he says. Dang it.
Yeah, so I think our dear listeners ought to go read it in a hurry. Go grab it, go read it, have some fun with it, challenge your own life, think about what you're doing. Just think about it, act on it. It's one thing. This is I guess the worry always about these intellectual pursuits. It's why when I was a kid, people still made fun of college boys.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes they'd insult me because I'd go on the job site with my book, and sit there and read in between hammer blows. But the difficulty is that you can get stuck in your head and it becomes an intellectual exercise. And so you can relate all about the theory of forms or Kant's categories or Nietzsche's attempted destruction of conventional morality. And you can tell somebody all the words about it. But what are you doing in your life? You're probably just doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
So what good was it to think all of these high thoughts? They never bear any fruit in your life. It's like, if you're the soil, we need your soil to say philosopher.
That's called a callback, everyone.
Is that good pod right there?
That's good pod. I like it. Yeah. Go read this thing. If nothing else, just go read Economy and go read The Pond in the Winter. If nothing else, just go read that. All of it's great. But listen, some of us dudes have trouble with flowery prose and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's got like accounting in there. He sounds like he does a survey of the depth of the pond.
Yeah.
He makes these little diagrams of how deep the water is and where he drilled holes in the ice and measured the depth of the water. He's just a scientist. He's a gentleman scholar. He's just the best and the worst, that guy.
Yep.
There is Henry David Thoreau's book, Walden. Go get that one. If you don't, you're screwing up. If you've got a 14-year-old to 19-year-old person in your life, make them read that as they're looking at what they're going to do with themselves as far as schooling or career and so on. I think it's a good one to read as we stand at crossroads. It's a good one. Karl, what are we going to read next time? I've got some stuff written down here, but I don't know.
See, this is the part of the show that I dread because I don't know
Really?
what to read next. I got some thoughts.
Okay, lay it on me.
The Modest Proposal. I think we might need a shorter one because this was 330 pages.
Listen, I definitely need a shorter one. I'm trying to finish Metaphysics. It's murdering me.
So why don't we do Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal?
That's excellent. My oldest daughter just read that.
Yeah, we're going to learn about eating Irish babies.
What's not to like? There you go. So hopefully you guys are reading along with us. Go get Jonathan Swift's little satire, A Modest Proposal, and we will talk about that one with you guys next Thursday.
Yes.
Thanks.